Hi, everybody, and welcome to the C10 Annual Public Meeting of 2020. I'm Natalie Treat, and I'm your Executive Director. This is our first time doing this, so we are just getting our technology going here. And Pat, if you want to, Pat Skibby, our Board President, if you are ready to give introductions, I just want to thank everybody again for joining us. We know you have a lot on your mind. We know this is a challenging time that we're all in this time of the pandemic. And I want to thank you for taking time to learn about what's happening at Safety at Seabrook. So I still need to figure out how to broadcast this on Facebook here. Oops. So, Pat Skibby. You got to unmute yourself.
There.
Okay.
So welcome everyone. I'm Pat Skibby, President of the Board of Directors of C10. And as you saw from the previous slide, we are a nonprofit foundation. We work for the safety and health of all people who live anywhere near the Seabrook nuclear power plant. We've been at this work since 1991, 29 years, and we plan to stay just as focused and just as dedicated into the foreseeable future. As one of our supporters said a few years ago, once you have a nuclear power plant, you have it forever. C10 is a membership organization. That means we rely on our astoundingly talented and dedicated volunteers and staff, and on community support. On this slide, you can see our team and the business allies who support C10. Sincerest thanks to every single one of those who understand how vital C10's role is and who consistently support that work. I also want to thank the Quaker Hill Foundation, whose generous grant this year is helping us purchase much needed updated hardware for our monitoring network. Special thanks too to Amesbury Community Television for helping broadcast this event on Amesbury's Channel 12 and on their community website. To all of you who are new to C10, welcome. Many thanks for being here. We hope you stay. Further appreciation to our excellent senators, Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, for their ongoing support and encouragement, and for sending their knowledgeable staff members, Hannah Vogel from Senator Markey's office and Olivia Paulo from Senator Warren's office. We'll be hearing from both of them in a bit. The deepest and hugest thanks go to our two totally outstanding experts in the field of ASR, alkali-silica-reaction, concrete degradation. Dr. Victor Soma, our pro bono concrete genius, who has spent literally hundreds of hours working on our case, and our fabulous nuclear power attorney, Diane Curran, who's our featured speaker this evening. Last, we all at C10 want you to know that we so deeply appreciate and value each and every one of you, our members, our supporters, and attendees at this annual meeting. Thank you for being here. Natalie.
All right. Sorry, folks. Just working on some technology here. I'm trying to make sure that we are broadcasting this on our website on C10. This is a lot of different technology to get going at one time. So let's see. Thank you, Pat. I'm going to turn off video for a few people to make it a little bit easier to see folks here. Okay. So again, thank you, everybody. I'm Natalie Hilt-Treat. I'm the Executive Director of C10. I want to thank our colleague, my colleague, Mike Manser, who is in our Amesbury office. He's going to show you our monitoring network in a little bit. Our terrific board of directors and our our advisory board, as well as Amesbury Community Television and Pat Clifford, Hannah and Olivia, as you heard, our attorney, Diane Curran, who's with us, and our business allies. We are really fortunate to be supported by our local business community, including, I want to thank some new and renewing business allies that you see on our list here. Dietz and Lynch, Health Matters, and Hydrogen Portraiture. So let's see. Okay, so I want to bring on Karen Claggett, who is our board clerk. I'm going to put your camera on, Karen. Let's see. I guess, Karen, you have to turn on your own video. But if you want to just go over some of the tech updates for people, and we'll take a pause to see how things are working out for people here.
Thank you, Natalie. We're so glad that all of you have joined us tonight. As you clearly are interested in the efforts of C10, we would encourage you to consider volunteering in some way to help us with our important mission. During this webinar, you will be in listen-only mode. Your Zoom camera will be off. If for any reason you encounter any problems during the webinar, you can also view the meeting at amesbury/ctv.org. Additionally, the meeting will be recorded and posted on the C10 website in a day or two. We would like to ask you to hold questions until the end of the presentation. Please use the question and answer, the Q&A function in the menu at the bottom of the screen to write out your questions. If the menu is not visible, you can bring it to the screen by moving the cursor over the zoomed picture. You may address questions to Natalie or to any of the participants. And thank you very much for your interest in C10.
Thank you, Karen. Just trying to make sure that we are working on Facebook here. A lot of controls to go through at once here. Great. Hey, Pat Clifford at Amesbury Cable, are you online as well? Amesbury Community TV?
Yes, it's on the Facebook, our Facebook page as well. And
is on your Facebook page?
And our website, this meeting.
Great. I think that I got it to work. There's a lot of things to get working at one time. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. For folks, that looks like it's there. Terrific. Okay, so again, for people that are just joining us from Facebook or again, with Amesbury Community TV, thank you so much, as well as to those of you who are webinar participants. I'm Natalie Treat. I'm the Executive Director of C10. I'm going to take a few minutes to, you can see on the screen our agenda that we're going to go through here. I'm going to take a few minutes to give some updates about C10. But first I'd like to take a minute, and I'm going to put a quick poll up on the screen if I can get this to work. For those who are on the webinar, if you could just take a minute and answer these quick 3 questions, this will help us to understand who is here. So, and it can also make sure that, let us know that you can see and hear us, because it's a little different format for us. Oh, I see some people are voting. That's good. Just give it a minute more. The results are coming in. All right, I'm going to close the poll. So I can share these results with you. What state do you live in? Most of our attendees, 65% are in Massachusetts. We have 23% in New Hampshire and some across the region and in other places. So thanks to everybody who's joining us. This is a good breakdown. How familiar are you with C10? Many of you we know have been with us since the beginning or a very long time. C10 has been around almost as long as Seabrook Station has been generating power. We've been doing our best to keep tabs on safety issues at the plant and be a resource for the public. So that's great. I'm also really happy to see that 38% of you are new in the last few years. Some of you maybe just found out about us through Facebook or are new to, very new to C10. So that will be good for us to keep in mind. Let's see, many of you are familiar with this issue of the concrete degradation going on at Seabrook, which was frankly intended to be the real focus of this meeting. As you'll hear, we thought that we would have a ruling from a federal board called the Atomic Safety Licensing Board. That didn't happen yet. It's been delayed a couple of times, and we're hoping to have some results in mid to late August. But we will be sure to spell out the acronym alkali-silica-reaction as ASR. Okay, so let me turn that off. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so y'all can see me while I speak. And oops, and now I see the questions that are coming in. Let me just take a quick minute and look at these. Okay, Karen, can you tell me, can you see my my speaker's head in full screen on your screen? Is that working out okay? Or what do you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so is that, did you see me as the speaker?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Sorry, folks. Still, all of the testing we did, we can't test everything in live. So, okay. So many of you are familiar with C10's work. As you know, we monitor and educate and advocate when it comes to safety at Seabrook Station. That is our reason for being. And in a moment, my colleague in our Amesbury office, Mike Manser, who's our network administrator, will give an overview of why and how we measure ambient radiation levels in the community surrounding Seabrook Station. And later you'll hear from our attorney, Diane Curran, about the legal challenge to how Seabrook is managing its concrete degradation. And while we're still awaiting a ruling, let me just say that whatever happens, I'm very proud of this organization and our team, a ton of work, a ton of volunteer work as well, to bring this case to the public view and to call for stronger oversight of the problems at Seabrook's concrete. The plant owner doesn't have to wait for a federal judge, frankly, to be told what to do. We've laid out some better options for them to monitor and manage this problem. And frankly, I hope that they'll choose the right path for all those that live and work near Seabrook. So aside from that, C10, we track daily and quarterly reports by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission as far as things like safety performance and operation status at Seabrook, and we follow national trends and developments in nuclear safety in the industry as well. So, you know, that's sort of some of the other ways that we monitor safety. We also try to keep regular communications with folks like the plant operators themselves at NextEra when we have questions. Though frankly, we have usually better luck getting answers from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission staff, in particular, the resident inspector at the plant, the senior resident inspector, Paul Cataldo, who's always been a really good resource for us to explain what's going on and, you know, be a conduit for good, solid information to the public. So as many of you know, during April, Seabrook Station was the first U.S. nuclear plant in the nation to go under under a refueling and maintenance outage during the pandemic. Most nuclear plants refuel and do maintenance about every 18 months to 2 years, and this is the time for Seabrook. So as this was going on, we had a lot of questions about how NextEra was keeping its workforce safe and healthy, especially with more than 1,000 contract workers coming and going. Would these workers be asked to work longer shifts, or would they have to bring in less qualified people due to the pandemic? We had questions like that. And according to the resident inspector, Paul Cataldo, NextEra seems to be doing quite well in terms of managing the health and safety of its workers, as far as we know. We were initially concerned to learn that certain safety inspections were being deferred with the pandemic. But in short, we were relatively satisfied with his explanation of what happened and what it meant, why this happened. You can look at our blog on c10.org and get more information about any of these issues, but these are some of the issues that we keep an eye on. So we also, some of you heard that there were a pair of malfunctions in late May and early June that caused what are known as scrams. And this is a malfunction that causes a sudden shutdown. And this happened at Seabrook when a bank of control rods unexpectedly inserted. And while we're still waiting the NRC's quarterly inspection report, which will be out in a few weeks, we do know that these events, while they're concerning and were costly to NextEra for the many days of outage, this didn't put the public at risk. So these are some of the things that we look at. We are very fortunate to be able to draw on the expertise of some of our advisors, including Dave Lochbaum, who's on the call with us today, who spent years in the industry, in the nuclear industry before working at Union of Concerned Scientists, and now he is retired and volunteering time. We also have on the call Paul Gunter, who's also on our board of advisors, and he directs the reactor oversight project at Beyond Nuclear. Later on, during our Q&A, we've asked Dave to share a few other updates on the call as well. Living in a pandemic, C10 is among the groups that are concerned with how a nuclear reactor would react, and how public health and safety agencies would work if there were another crisis that happened that either precipitated a nuclear accident or hampered evacuation. So these are some of the issues that we've been looking at. Recently, FEMA reviewed the emergency plans for the nation's nuclear plants, including Seabrook, in light of the pandemic. And frankly, they pretty much, they gave them a pass. They said everything is adequate, but what would this mean in practice? We don't know. We have a lot of questions. Would it mean more sheltering in place if there were an accident? It sounds like it. So we're still not satisfied, and we're pushing for more answers on this area. So again, we will be doing more writing on our blog and conveying information as we can. You'll also hear a bit more from Hannah Vogel from Senator Markey's office, who has been closely following safety at Seabrook in her position and working to shine a light on nuclear safety. So that is about our sort of our watchdog and education work. And now I wanted to just shift gears quickly and talk about our organization, C10. Before I do that, I should probably pause and just make sure that we don't have any urgent questions coming through. It looks like we're good. Despite these difficult times that we're in, C10 as an organization we're doing all right for now. And last December, we moved to a wonderful new office in Amesbury at the CI Works Mill Complex. Amesbury is where I grew up, and it's wonderful to kind of be home. I can actually, when the leaves aren't on the trees, look out and see the roof of my childhood home. So it's a wonderful place. It's a great building at CI Works. We really appreciate being there. And I know that CEO Bob O'Brien has joined us in the call. We also are happy to have new partners. We're working a lot with folks like the Amesbury Chamber of Commerce, which is great. But obviously for us, everything has changed in the pandemic. We're working remotely and we're missing the opportunity to have in-person meetings for both education, policy work, and fundraising as well. So thank you all for taking the time to join with us. The core of C10's work, as you'll hear, is to operate the Citizens Radiological Monitoring Network. And we've been contracted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since about 1993 to provide this service. And we are grateful to our Massachusetts legislative delegation, in particular, Rep. James Calcourse, Senator Diana DeZoglio, and Senator Bruce Tarr for their support and engagement of our work and our state funding for the public service that we provide. We all know that fiscal times are quite tough. The 2020 state fiscal year just ended, and we don't really know what's going to happen with the state budget. It looks like they're kind of taking it month to month for now. So if you happen to see any of our Massachusetts legislators, feel free to thank them for their support and let them know that C10's work is important to you. So as I said, we're in solid financial position now, but we're always looking to diversify our funding. And I want to stress that community support, including contributions from people like you and our business allies and foundations, are key to our survival. And I hope that you will agree that now more than ever, we need independent science-minded watchdogs looking out for public safety. And that's the role that C10 is proud to provide for the citizens in the 10-mile radius of Seabrook, which is what our name stands for, and beyond. So lastly, again, I'm so grateful for our board and our advisory board and all our volunteers. Just before this webinar, we had a quick board meeting and we reaffirmed our board officers. So I want to announce those. They are Pat Skibby as president, Carrie Stratton-Boyd as vice president, Karen Claggett as clerk, and Pat Torkelson as our treasurer. It is important to the health of organizations like us to bring in new perspectives and new energy whenever we can. So if you're interested in getting more involved in serving on a committee, please let me know and we can talk. So that is it for my remarks. I am going to go back to sharing the screen and bringing up Mike Manser. Where do I go back to the screen sharing? Let's see. I want to give a hats off to everybody who has done these sort of Zoom webinars, because it's a lot to manage, let me tell you. Let me find Mike's picture here, and I want to bring you back up, Mike. Let's see, Mike, can you turn on your camera?
I think I can.
Okay. And I will, all right, there's Mike, nice to see you. Mike and I haven't been in the office at the same time for quite a while, but we will be seeing each other to get professional photo headshots, thanks to hydrogen portraiture tomorrow in Rowley. That'll be great. All right, I'm gonna turn off my video and turn it over to you, Mike, and turn the slide for you. All right, you're on.
Live?
Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our virtual annual public meeting here at C10. My name is Mike Manser, and I manage the Radiation Monitoring Network. First slide, I believe, is up there is why monitor? Well, there is no such thing as a safe amount of radiation. And seeing as we live within 10 miles of the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant, and the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant is a steam generated power source, they have to release pressure, and there is radioactive material in those releases. So one of our primary functions is to monitor that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Can we move on to another slide here? We collect this data, and it is used for analysis by board scientists. We also collect it for studies by the state safety and emergency agencies that may want to analyze in case there is a situation in the EPZ zone near Seabrook Station, and we store that for the state. Are we moving on to another slide here, Natalie? Yes, no? Got our second slide. So we operate the only real-time radiation monitoring network in the country. It's community-based. We are contracted by the state to do this. And we run this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as I said. If you look at this map, most of our stations are in Massachusetts. We have 14 stations on the network, 12 are in Massachusetts, and 2 right now are up in New Hampshire. We're currently in the process of adding 2 more, thanks to the Citizens Initiative for Radiation Monitoring New Hampshire, led by Representative Peter Somsich. They have found the funding to add 2 stations up in the New Hampshire area. We have yet to determine where those sites are going to be located. Those are going to be privately funded because it has been difficult to get assistance from the state of New Hampshire to help with this real-time monitoring up there. And this group is also supporting some needed upgrades and maintenance on the sites that we already have there. I believe
Great, Mike. Yeah, I took off the slides now, so now you people can see you more closely and see the central station.
Okay, so I don't know how good my lighting is here in the office.
Looks good.
Setting over to the right, which is really a detriment to what you can see. But in front of you here is a live map that we're running from our central station. It shows all of the stations that are in the EPZ, the emergency planning zone around Seabrook nuclear power plant, which is this white dot right here. Many of our stations have anemometers where we can measure the wind direction and the speed of how fast the wind is going at any given time. These recordings are taken minute by minute, and they are uploaded to a storage facility at the end of every day. We also use these radiation probes. We call them probes. They monitor beta and gamma radiation. These are outside facilities. We are in public facilities, schools, buildings. We're in private homes. We are in private businesses. And we are spread out through this entire 10-mile radius of the Seabrook Station. And, you know, thanks to all the hard work from Representative Somsich up in New Hampshire, we are really getting a move up there, and we're hoping to balance out our monitoring between Massachusetts and New Hampshire, because we do have a void up there, and it's very important that we keep this monitoring tight around Seabrook Station to make sure that we're collecting data in equal manners.
Thank you so much, Mike. I think that yeah, that's really helpful. I don't see any quick questions coming in. So again, we have a nice little video on our website that will show people more about the monitoring and how it works. And so I encourage people to go to c-10.org for that. So thank you so much, Mike. I'm going to take your screen off right now, if I can figure out how to do that. And I'm going to bring up, I'm going to share my screen again. And here we have our 2 state senators in Massachusetts, Senator Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren. And we are fortunate to have 2 of their terrific staffers here. So Hannah Vogel, I'm going to unmute you, and Olivia Paulo. And if you guys can turn on your cameras as well. All right. So Hannah, I will thank you again on behalf of all of us. Thank you to both of you for joining and for the leadership that Senator Markey in particular, and also Senator Warren, but Senator Markey has been a real stalwart working for nuclear safety for a long time, even before he was a US Senator. So I think it'll be helpful. I've asked Hannah and Olivia to join to tell us a little bit about the role that their offices play in congressional oversight of the nuclear industry and safety thereof.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. Should I go ahead and get started?
Sure. And I'm going to actually, Olivia, I'm going to turn off your camera for just a minute so that we can see Hannah. Go ahead.
Well, first, I want to thank everyone for having me participate in the C10 annual public meeting. I'm really glad to be able to be here to represent Senator Markey. And I believe Claire Looney, who is the Senator's regional director for the area and who is a terrific advocate and resource as well. I believe she is following along. So I wanted to give her a quick shout out too. The work that you all do to monitor activity at Seabrook, provide invaluable oversight and advance relevant research is just absolutely critical. Simply put, so much of our work in the Senate and on a federal level would not happen or not be so effective without the work that you all have done. I want to provide a little bit of background on Senator Markey's work on nuclear safety beyond just the local work he's done. His work on nuclear issues and his efforts to make sure that the nuclear industry is operating safely and securely stretch back decades. Working with other members of Congress in the House of Representatives and in the Senate with Senator Warren, who is a terrific partner on all of these issues. His efforts span from the national, like his recent work on the ongoing rulemaking on decommissioning nuclear plants, to the local. Currently, much of his work takes place in the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works, on which he sits and which has the responsibility to oversee the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC. One longstanding area of interest is security at nuclear plants. So the Energy Policy Act of 2005 included a provision authored by then Representative Markey, which required that the NRC run force-on-force exercises and security evaluations at every single nuclear facility in the country. Senator Markey has continued to fight back against industry efforts to dodge or weaken this requirement and allow for self-assessment to replace independent exercises. So right now we're actually closely tracking the ongoing discussion that the NRC is having on how to have independent force-on-force exercises that still protects plant worker health in the time of COVID-19. Senator Markey has also been working to hold the NRC accountable for inspections of on-site independent spent fuel storage installations, pushing back against a recent NRC proposal to limit inspection hours. Since we don't have a comprehensive solution to long-term nuclear waste storage in this country, communities are stuck with indefinite short-term on-site waste storage. And that storage needs to be kept secure from threats, monitors for changes in exposure, including climate impacts, and also should be in the safest possible containers. That's one of the reasons why Senator Markey introduced the Dry Cask Storage Act, which in this Congress is S2854, to make sure that every nuclear reactor operator complies with an NRC approved plan to move spent nuclear fuel from the spent fuel pools into dry cask storage within 7 years, and also extends the emergency planning zone for non-compliant reactor operators. More specifically at Seabrook, I'm happy to talk about other national level NRC or safety issues if anyone's interested. But more specifically at Seabrook, Senator Markey has been fighting to use the best science regarding the degradation caused by the alkali-silica-reaction, or ASR. He's worked with his colleagues, including Senator Warren, to push for public meetings and hearings before the NRC renewed or amended the Seabrook plant license. The issues surrounding the Seabrook plant are technical, they're complex, and they deserve public transparency and accountability. Recently, Senator Markey worked with his colleagues to make sure that the refueling process followed the health guidelines for COVID-19. So we were briefed by the NRC and by NextEra on what procedures they've instituted. We also got a briefing from NextEra on the 2 recent manual shutdowns at the plant. So NextEra said they're still looking on whether they need to tighten their inspection criteria to ensure that any problems like this are caught in the future before they occur. Again, I just want to thank all of you and express the thanks of the Senator and of our entire office for the work that you all perform and the oversight that you do to keep our community safe. I'll be available for additional questions about federal level work on Seabrook or on nuclear safety, and please feel free to reach out anytime as well to me or to Claire Looney. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was great. I learned so much I didn't even capture it all. So I've had to get your notes after this. Yeah, I've been with C10 for 3 years, and he's been following these issues and working hard for so long on behalf of all of us in the region. So thank you. I'm going to bring on Olivia now, and I'm going to ask to unmute you and turn on your camera. Let's see, where did you go, Olivia? Let's see. So if you could start your video, we should see you. Thank you, Hannah.
Hey folks,
There's Olivia.
here I am. So I'm Olivia. I am one of the regional directors in Senator Warren's office. Specifically, I cover the North Shore and the Merrimack Valley. As an office, we work closely with our delegation partners, and we remain actively engaged in situations across the state, especially what's going on in Seabrook. So I'm really just grateful to be here tonight. I am so grateful for all of the work that you do and for including me in this conversation. And I'm looking forward to listening and learning this evening. So thank you all. And to echo to what Hannah said, I'm always available for questions or to chat. If I don't know the answer, I can certainly find it for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you to Senator Warren for her work. I know it really takes a team to make this possible. So, all right. So next, I am going to figure out how to, yes, thank you. You took yourself off, and I'm going to turn on your camera and unmute you, Chris Nord, one of the founding members and directors of C10. Chris, are you coming on here?
Let's see.
There you are.
I'll
You've got a
show
halo.
Well, I don't see myself, so.
You are on, and we can see
Okay.
you, and you
Okay.
are,
I have a halo.
yeah.
Do I need to change that somehow, or let the
No.
halo be?
That's great. So Chris is one of our founding members, as I said, of C10, who has chaired up this committee that we've worked on the concrete issues, and he also has helped to build and maintain our monitoring network. So he's really amazing and a jack of all trades. We spent our whole last annual meeting going over the ASR issue, and we've got so much background. I want to remind people you can get a lot at c10.org in terms of our history and videos and that sort of stuff. But Chris is going to tee it up and recap this issue for us. Thanks, Chris.
All right. So I'm just going back as far as 2009 to say that in that year, C10 learned that Seabrook was the first US atomic plant with alkali-silica-reaction plaguing its concrete. And yet the owners made no mention of this in their application to extend Seabrook's operating license to 2050. And I would say that that fact motivated C10 to really dig into this issue. And a strong team effort on the part of many board members and other members and volunteers that we called upon for help resulted finally in our intervening, gaining intervention status before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board beginning in 2017. So this is actually, the litigation itself has been going on a long time now. Even as lay people, we knew that next era's gambit for testing fast-acting concrete in a lab in Texas could not truly be representative of Seabrook concrete sitting for decades as it has in New Hampshire salt marsh. Fortunately for us, our efforts attracted the attention of Professor Victor Salma, one of the world's foremost experts on the ASR problem. He volunteered to serve as our expert witness because he believed in what we were trying to do and as was said earlier, has literally logged hundreds of hours of research, preparation, and testimony on behalf of C10 and on behalf of our community. Professor Salma asserts that the monitoring protocols offered by NextEra for ASR not only do not provide scientifically based assurance of safe operation for the license extension out to 2050, they do not even assure safe operation to the end of the current license, which is 2030. The fact that the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board has repeatedly delayed their decision deadline in our case gives us hope, at least, that this judicial wing of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is taking Professor Salma and C10 seriously. Our case has benefited in equal measure from the legal expertise of our guest speaker, who you have already heard is Diane Curran. Diane is a veteran litigator before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and a longtime friend of many of the members of C10. So I want to say thank you for joining in, Diane. The podium is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Let me get you, that was terrific. Here is Diane Curran's picture with a picture of some ASR concrete, and Diane Curran in her Tacoma Park home. I gotta turn on your camera here.
Oh.
Where did you go?
I think I just turned myself on.
There you are. All right, Chris, I'm gonna turn off your video for now. And thank you, Diane. So there's a picture of you, so I don't need to have that slide shared. I'm gonna let the folks see you. There you are. Thank you.
Here I am. Hello, everybody. It's such a privilege to be here tonight and to talk to you about one of my favorite all-time cases, the C10 intervention and the Seabrook license amendment proceeding. And I tell you why it's one of my favorites. And I think Natalie and Chris both said a couple of things, and Hannah too, that put it over the top for me. Natalie described C10 as an independent, science-minded watchdog. All those words are so important. Independent, science-minded watchdog. And Chris talked about how this is a team working on this case for over 10 years. I walked into this thing after C10 had discovered that basically NextEra was sitting on some very damaging information about the condition of their containment enclosure building and not including it in their license renewal application and putting pressure on the NRC to deal with it. They were constantly communicating with the inspectors. They were doing rulemaking petitions. They were talking with their congressional representatives, including Senator Ed Markey, who, yes, is a champion of safety in nuclear facilities and has been since I started in this business in the late 70s, an amazing advocate. That kind of dogged, independent, science-minded watchdogging is what brings the pressure to bear on the agency to take the steps that then create the legal opportunities. The legal opportunity that came up in 2016 that C10 took advantage of was that NextEra filed a license amendment request. They were told by the NRC, you need to address ASR, a very serious safety problem, degradation of concrete, in your license. And you have to show how you're going to deal with it. And you need to do that in the context of license renewal, because the NRC really can't approve a 20-year renewal without a program that addresses this. And as Chris was saying, NextEra did kind of the regular thing, kind of job that you do, an ordinary engineering analysis for this problem, did a testing program in Texas. And C10, again, independent, science-minded, got an expert who helped them request a hearing. And obtained a hearing on this question of whether the testing program was representative of the concrete at Seabrook. And then C10 did the awesome thing of getting Dr. Salma to be the expert in the hearing itself. And I don't know if there's anybody in the entire world who knows as much about ASR as Dr. Salma. He did an incredible job of reviewing mountains of documents, presenting testimony, showing that this testing program was not representative of the conditions at Seabrook. And that's the evidence that's now before the licensing board. In addition to the strength of Dr. Salma's evidentiary case, a lot of technical information about the testing program, there's something else that we have on our side that's very important, and that is that Dr. Salma essentially was the only one of, I don't know how many experts in this case. Between Next Era and the NRC staff, they had 15 or more experts. And none of these people really had experience with ASR. And none of them was independent in the sense that the NRC staff didn't have their usual independent watchdog is the Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards. They had the ACRS review the application, but they didn't really have anybody who knew anything about ASR. Next Era hired people to do the engineering work, but they never hired anyone to evaluate that engineering work, anyone with real significant ASR expertise and say whether it was good or not. The only independent expert in the case was Dr. Salma. And it's our position that as a federal regulatory agency, the NRC cannot approve this license amendment request unless it has a trustworthy, competent, independent analysis from some scientific body. They haven't got it. And it's one reason, as Chris was saying, the delay in this decision gives us hope. And I am also hopeful because of the strength of not only our evidence, but our legal argument that this agency has essentially rubber stamped Next Era's application without really having the skill to evaluate it. When we get this decision from the licensing board, we are really hoping that it will reject the license amendment request. That doesn't mean that Seabrook stops operating it. It means that they need to go back to the drawing board and redo this ASR evaluation and put in better steps for evaluating it, better steps for monitoring it. Equally importantly, if we prevail, it's going to mean that the license renewal decision is going to have to be reversed and re-examined and cannot be, this license extension that was made last year simply can't stand if the essential element of the ASR program is not adequate. Again, none of these things mean that Seabrook stops operating necessarily unless, some emergency is found related to ASR. But what it does mean is that there's a level of accountability that's imposed. So this plant is not allowed to operate another 20 years until 2050 with a substandard program for monitoring and assessing ASR. And I just want to say again how, we hope to win this case, but equally important is the kind of pressure that C10 consistently puts on the NRC to do the right thing through contacts with the agency, by working with elected representatives, by getting in the press. All those things are enormously important. And this is an organization that follows through. I can't tell you how impressed I am with the professionalism of all these folks at C10, just an extraordinary group. And what a privilege it is to represent you. Thank you.
Wow, Diane. That's great. Thank you so much for those kind words and for summing this up. I will put me on again. Again, I'm Natalie. Let's check my camera again. I'm the executive director for those who are just joining us. And we just heard from our fantastic attorney, Diane Curran, about the still pending legal challenge that C10 brought regarding Seabrook Station's handling of their degraded concrete and their concrete aging management program. So now is the time that we have for some questions. And what would it be without a little Arnold Horshack in your lives here? Here he is. Welcome back, Cotter. No? So for those who are joining us by the webinar, we have a Q&A box. I'm going to do my best to look at this. And if you're joining on Facebook, I see a few people that are on Facebook. We will also try to do our best to look at questions there. Let's see what we got here. We have one question from Jack Santos. And he says in your report, Jack says, if the NRC decision does not achieve our objectives, what other options do we have? What's our fallback plan? Well, Diane, I will invite you to comment on that as delicately as you will, because we don't know what's going to happen, do we?
Yeah. Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but there's several options. One is to appeal. The first place one appeals is to the NRC commissioners. That's the 5 people at the top of the agency who would review the board's decision and could reverse it. And then if you lose at the commission level, you can go to the US Court of Appeals. And you would have a choice between the DC Circuit and the First Circuit. And at each of those stages, you just have to review the decision and decide if you've got a strong enough case. But the other thing I think to bear in mind here is that, and I've had this experience over and over again, you don't necessarily win NRC cases, and if you win them, oftentimes a tremendous effort is made to undermine whatever victory you have. And one reason why C10 is a good organization for this work is you're set up to do the work, to keep the pressure on. Even if you technically lose in front of the licensing board, you've made an overwhelming case against NextEra. And the next thing that happens at that plant, you're going to be able to bring that evidence to bear. So you're set up to continue to watchdog this, to press on it at every opportunity. And that's the kind of really long-term, difficult, but ultimately productive kind of work that achieves something in these kinds of cases.
That's great, Diane. And as I've said, they don't need to wait for a judge to tell them what to do. They don't need to fight a little citizens group. They have all these resources. They have all these experts. We had the world's best expert working with us pro bono because he felt strongly about it enough. And for those that want to see a little bit of the backstory on Dr. Victor Salma, he had actually done a multi-million-dollar contract with the NRC to study the hypothetical problem of ASR nuclear plants and how they would be weakened with earthquakes. And what did they do? They put that on shelf and didn't bring that information in. And I think that's one reason why he felt so strongly he wanted to get involved. So we were down, was it last summer? We met with David Abel from the Boston Globe when you and Victor were here, and he said, well, what would it cost to do it right? Would it, be cost prohibitive? And Victor said, no. He said, well, he couldn't put a number on it, but he said, this would not break, essentially, this wouldn't break the bank. NextEra could do the right thing. The science is there. There are better ways to do both that monitoring of what's happening and the modeling of what could happen in a way that they're not doing it now. So, we, C10 and Victor, have laid out a better path. They could adopt some of that anyways. They don't have to fight us. They don't have to, we're their neighbors. We're in their community, so they could do the right thing. So we'll see what happens, and maybe we'll have another exciting webinar in the fall or whenever it happens that we get a ruling.
Natalie, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, go ahead, Chris. You
Could
wanna
I break
jump
in just for a
Yeah.
second to make a correction? I just want to be sure that we represent Dr. Sama correctly. The study that he undertook for NRC was a $700,000 study.
Okay,
The
not
other
multi-million.
study that was done by, I think it was Brookhaven, was a multi-million-dollar study.
Right,
His study, Dr. Sama's study, was much more thoroughgoing because of his greater understanding of ASR. Unfortunately, his was the study that NRC decided not to pay the closest attention to. So we just want to be careful
Right.
about how we characterize them. That's
right.
all. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Chris. It's these things get a little rusty over
all
the
right.
time. I want to take one more question related to ASR, and then I want to bring up Dave Lochbaum, if I could put you on deck, Dave. So John Stevens, who's also on our advisory board and interested in following these issues, writes that ASR and the license extension are two different issues, a bit somewhat interrelated. If Nextera gets their act together on an improved plan to monitor ASR, what are the arguments that would ensure that Seabrook should end operation in 2029? I don't know quite how we could, Diane or Chris, I mean, we're in the business at C10 of trying to keep safety, as long as Seabrook is operating and beyond, to ensure that it's safe. So this is really about, it should be up to the federal regulators, and we just want to put the pressure to them to do their job and make sure that they have the best tools. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would just add that Dr. Sama testified that ASR, there's no regulatory program for ASR in the United States, and that it's a phenomenon that's found all over the world. And in many countries, what's done is a very sophisticated system of monitoring and modeling is set up so that you're watching this phenomenon over the years, and you want to set up a program where you have a degree of confidence that from year to year whether it's getting significantly worse. Once you have that in place, I think that's the most important thing. And it's possible, I think, that it could be determined that the plant could safely operate beyond 2030. I think the real important thing is that they don't have it now. They don't have a basis, as Chris was saying, for figuring out even short-term operation, is it safe? And Dr. Sama said he wouldn't, there's many projects where he wouldn't hesitate, some big dams with ASR, to buy a house downstream of the dam. But he would not buy a house in the Seabrook area because of the lack of adequate monitoring and modeling. And that's the key.
Thank you, Diane. All right, we are so fortunate to have as one of our advisors, Dave Lochbaum, who worked for years in the nuclear industry before turning to Union of Concerned Scientists. And when I realized Dave was going to be on the call, I thought, how can we not take advantage of his insights? So Dave, your phone is, or you are unmuted, and you had some issues that you wanted to bring to the attention of our audience.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. I appreciate this opportunity to be on the board of advisors and work with C10 as I have over the years. It's been very pleasant on my standpoint. I wanted to speak to something that Natalie mentioned in her opening remarks about work that was deferred from the refueling outage earlier this year at Seabrook. In addition, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has relaxed longstanding regulations governing working hours by nuclear plant employees during the pandemic. Those situations by themselves are not bad, particularly when they were backed up by a safety net that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had in its quarterly reports issued on every operating plant in the country through its reactor oversight process. Unfortunately, the NRC is also weakening that safety net. Within the last week, I received a secret NRC report that I'm not supposed to have, but I got, that was developed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission staff about the NRC inspection findings. This year and last year, they're about 50% lower than they were just a few years ago. That NRC report pointed out that it's not because nuclear safety performance at the plants has improved, but because plant owners are not reporting problems and NRC inspectors are finding it too difficult to write tickets for safety violations they find. A majority of the NRC inspectors reported during an annual survey that it's just too difficult to write up safety violations this year as it was in the year 2014. So they're simply not doing it. So it's not that performance is getting better, it's that the NRC is turning a blind eye to safety problems because it's too much work. Owners are fighting too hard. The consequence of deferring work on safety systems, allowing workers to work many, many hours longer than fatigue science allows, and NRC inspectors not writing tickets on safety violations is a recipe for disaster. The Fukushima disaster in 2011 was attributed to regulatory capture. I'm not saying this is regulatory capture. It seems more like regulatory surrender by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to the wishes and whims of the nuclear industry. You can't let your guard down on nuclear safety. It's not like 70% is a passing grade because the consequences of a bad day are horrendous. And yet that's the road we're on unless groups like C10, which is very effective and one of the reasons I'm glad to be on the board of advisors, can help put a spotlight on this and help the NRC find a better way of doing business. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Dave. So, we'll be following offline and hoping to take some of these insights. And you've got a great blog that you posted for Nuclear Intelligent Weekly that we picked up about a nuclear that was about a hurricane in a pandemic, but the idea was what would we do if there were a nuclear accident in a pandemic as well. And so we want to keep these issues to the fore, and we want to think about, what can a group like C10 do? I mean, you have a unique position in terms of your both technical and regulatory understanding of these issues. And so, what can our members do to help, and with our congressional, delegation and others, what can we do to keep the pressure on is what I would ask you with these issues.
Well, I think going back to what Diane Curran spoke to earlier about the ASLB ruling pending, I don't think you can possibly lose that ruling, because if you look, as Chris Nord pointed out, the original application in 2009 didn't really describe ASR. It's because of C10 and the work that C10 has done that application is a whole lot better now than it was then. It may not be the Cadillac version that Victor wants, but it's a whole lot better than it was what NextEra wanted a decade ago. So I think it's that kind of results that C10 gets that I think can be replicated over and over again. That's not the kind of result that you see in a lot of places. And that's why I'm glad to work with C10, because you guys get results for the benefit of the entire community.
Thank you for that. I would, great. That was just really helpful to have you working with us, and we can't thank you enough, Dave, for your insights and your help, for particularly your rapid response. What is a scram and what does this mean? And your help on that. So again, if people want to look in our blog, you can see some more background there. So I am going to turn back on the video for our Chris and Diane, and see if there are any other questions. Chris and Diane, if you want to turn back on your video. Are there any other questions that the audience has, or are there any of our, and you can use the chat feature or the Q&A, I'm trying to look at all these, any other of our board members or advisory board members that want to join in on the conversation? That if you have points to add, please either unmute yourself if you're one of our panelists, or shoot me a note. And we would love to see if there are more questions. I'm trying to monitor this here. Anything else? Pat Skibby, Is there anything else that you would like to add, our president of C10? Or Chris? We're doing quite,
Just
Yeah,
keeping
go-
my fingers crossed.
yeah. Diane Teed is also on the line. Diane Teed was one of practically founding board member, a longtime treasurer, and also a real incredibly hard co-chair working with Chris on this license amendment work and on the Seabrook's concrete. Diane is now on our advisory board, and but she is the one who did so much to keep things moving in terms of the filings and all. Before we had Diane Curran as our attorney, I pretended that I was one and was doing the filings, and Diane T helped keep us all arranged and continues to help with research and writing and review of materials. In this case, we have spent a lot of time on it. I see another question has come in. Oh, there was just Rep. Somsich, who's on the call from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Thank you so much for joining us again, Rep. Somsich, who is leading the charge to help us expand the radiological monitor network in New Hampshire with the Citizens Initiative. So I don't see any other questions coming in, and I'm trying to make sure that I look at if there are anybody else that has anything to add.
Oh, I can add something. I can't camera myself. It's Pat Skibby. But
Oh, do I have to ask to start video? There you go.
no, but I just would like to say that I was echoing what Diane Curran said. Oh, sorry, now my lighting's bad. But that it's such a great organization, and I have been with C10 from the beginning. And I feel like in this meeting, if I had just learned about C10 and joined this meeting, not knowing anything else about C10, I would be so impressed with every single person that spoke, so impressed with the broad range of experts brought in for this meeting that I just am so impressed. It was a fantastic meeting, and thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Well, with that,
But,
let me,
I'd
yeah,
like
go
to
ahead,
make
Chris.
just one addition before we close, just to say, I know that there have been dozens and dozens of people who were not directly involved in this issue before members of C10 reached out to them to ask for funding. It took a lot of money to get this intervention done before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board. And we had to do a lot of fundraising. And so while we have a chance to say so, I would like to just extend my personal thanks to whoever is out there listening who may have contributed to this effort, because it was a huge nut for us to come up with the money necessary to make it work. And so I'm just personally appreciative, and I know everyone from C10 from the board is also appreciative. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, we have come just past 8 o'clock, and I'm so happy that so many of you have stuck with us. For those of you that are new to C10, you can see on our slide here, there's a lot of ways to get involved and to follow what we're doing. We do our best to post on Facebook and Twitter. We get out a newsletter and blog fairly regularly. And, you know, sadly, we're not able to do a lot of in-person events, but we can do more virtual events. If you know of another group that would like to learn about us, or if you have ideas of ways to bring us into a school virtually or meet with leaders, we'd love to do that. If you want to volunteer, again, these board members, I cannot tell you how much knowledge and hard work there is in the years that they put in. I'm new to C10, 3 years as the executive director, but it's just an incredible team. But we are always looking for people to get more involved in joining committees and things like that to keep us going in communications and fundraising and research. Another little commercial that's just up on the screen is that, you know, my background, as some of you know, is in energy efficiency. And I got contacted by a group that is a contractor for Mass Save that does home energy audits for National Grid and NSTAR and the others in Massachusetts. And they said, we'd like to help you if you can, drive some business our way. And I said, well, this seems like a win-win because as many of you know, the cheapest, cleanest energy that we use is the kind that we never need. So if you want to, even in the time of pandemic, there's a lot that you can do virtually and even get stuff mailed to you. So I want to encourage people to take advantage of that. This is on our website as well, Homeworks Energy. Let's see, I just see if I have any other quick, let's see. So I think with that, I'm going to close it out for tonight. And I want to thank our whole panel and all of the audience. If we didn't get to your questions, we will certainly be available to follow up offline. Here is me and Mike, the staff, the paid staff of C10. Everybody else who works so hard is volunteer. And so, I welcome you to follow up with any questions if we didn't get to you. And I want to thank everybody again for joining us. We will be, sending out information through the social media and the press and all that as soon as we find out about this ruling. The work continues for as long as Seabrook is operational and beyond. We want to make sure they're good neighbors to us. We want to make sure that we're as safe as we can be because for those of us who live here or love this place in the greater Seabrook area, this is home. So thank you again to Diane, Chris, Olivia, Hannah, Pat, Amesbury Community TV, Dave Lochbaum. Did I say Mike? All of you for joining us, and we will thus conclude the webinar.
Thanks,
All right.
Natalie.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Diane.
Have a great night.
Night, everybody. Thank you, Diane.
Bye.
Night, Pat. Thank you.
Night, Chris.